You copy the great players. Like I listened to Benny Goodman when I was a kid, and then Charlie Parker, who was more modern, and many players, piano players, and I used to write down or notate their solos, note for note, because I wanted to know the mystery of jazz. You know, like a lot of great people, my peers, whatever, older, younger, everybody copied from everybody. So even my heroes, all of a sudden, for example, some years ago I was in a store with my wife Setsuko, who's Japanese, and Star Market or whatever, and they had these $1 deals CDs, and I bought a couple classical CDs. I don't normally buy that and listen to that, but I bought it. It was cheap, and I figured I'll be open, probably learn something hearing some music I don't normally listen to in my life. So I listened to it, and I went over to my wife one day after I listened. I said, wow. Again, he took a theme, Mozart, one of the great composers, that heard the whole orchestration in his head all at once. Very rare to hear what the flutes are playing against the string parts. The flutes might go da 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 da, and the strings are going dee da 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 da, you know, whatever. And then the oboe's doing this, and he's hearing everything simultaneously, and the whole piece. It could be 5 or 10 minutes. That's beyond genius to me. I have some talent in certain areas, but we all have things that we do. I don't worry about missing a note or two. It's what's from the heart, because I always believe, for me, you can get as mental as you want, but from my point of view, if you play from your heart, you've never lost anything. When I first got into wanting to play jazz, I think the thing that turned me on the most was the freedom of it. And as I had mentioned before in some other interviews, that I was like the worst clarinet player in the 5th grade for about a year and a half. I didn't care because I was into playing basketball or whatever. But I would move my fingers. As a good basketball player at age 10 or 12, I could dribble really fancy. So I had these fast fingers. I still do. I'm probably as nimble or what it's quick now as I was when I was a kid, and more control, wiser, but still childlike or whatever. But I wanted to play the clarinet. I would do this, and I couldn't even play more than dee da da, you know. But it was my dream to fly. So, in a very spiritual sense, to me, this is. Who wants to be held down? Who wants to have a chain, a ball and chain on them? Who wants to be a slave? You know, the times when I've been a slave to myself, stuff I've laid on myself, or other people saying you can't do this, or authority figures, that kind of stuff. I don't want to play just like Charlie Parker. Wonderful. Or just like Miles Davis, or whoever these great players, or Benny Goodman. Wonderful players, but as I mentioned before, I'm coming into a thing where, and this really has a total overview of spiritual stuff, of wanting to be my own person. I mean, I'm 65 years old. You have to come to grips with who you are. I'm not comparing so much anymore. I've heard so many great players I've looked up to, I don't say worshipped, that you go, man, I can never do that, or whatever. And now I can do a lot of stuff they do. Some, to me, just as good. Some, I think, are much more creative in certain ways. But there are other things that Fred has that I don't think they have, to be quite honest. And even in a lifetime, maybe they wouldn't, because I'm who I am. It's not bragging about it, it's just I know what I've experienced in my own life. And you don't have to have paid dues the way some other people do, not to negate anybody else's life. I have deep respect for, I can think of 100 people in different fields that are just wonderful. And I keep listening to people and go, man, is that incredible? Even young kids singing or whatever. Bring me to tears. But I still love what I do. And it's just about learning, as I'm still doing, how to love yourself on many levels. And I don't know how many people really think about that. Great players or whatever, that they might be very engrossed, and I'm not judging, to each his own. My thing is more in the sense of I'm learning who I am as a spiritual being, not just playing jazz.